So, hey again, folks. It's another episode of Open World Chat. We are back, as we are back every 2 weeks. Although now that I've said that, probably something will go wrong. So knock on wood, every 2 weeks. I'm John Odom. I'm here with Mark Card once again. Mark, how are you?
Yeah, we're just persistent. We're never leaving you alone. We're going to be here until we get bored or until we, make lots of money.
Or both. I'll
Or
take
both.
both.
That'd be
I'd
good.
take both. Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, so this time around, we're going to talk about, it's timely, right, to
Yes.
talk about fascism. Not to be depressing right off the bat, but, oh, sure, of course, to be depressing right off the bat. Who am I kidding? That's what I meant. So now that I've depressed you, about the real world, let's talk about what it looks like in the unreal world. Fascism in genre, in sci-fi, maybe some in fantasy. Um, we're going to have a lot of conversations about examples of that, but to really dig into them, I think we have to do the really problematic task. It ain't simple. It's not like we're talking about democracies or, autocracies. We're going to try to define fascism, which is a lot harder said than or easier said than done. Yes, that's the expression. It's easier said than done. Sorry, I think I need another drink. So, Mark, this is in your wheelhouse. All right, you're Mr. Political Science PhD. Why don't you take a swing to inform this discussion? Why don't you give us a shot at actually defining fascism for us?
Okay, we're going to do this in two parts, part at the beginning, part at the end. Yeah, so I'm going to give you an example I'm going to give you uh, an example of how to identify what the this is called sci-fi interfaces, and I love his tagline. His tagline is "Stop watching sci-fi, start using it." So the title of this particular article he writes is "A Surprisingly Empty Survey: Strong Fascism in Screen Science Fiction."
That would be
So
interesting to see his
he
list,
says
but
that for something in science fiction to really be fascist, it has to do four things. And if you're not doing all four, it's not really fascism. We'll talk about whether that's true or not later. At the end, after we talk about fascism according to these four things, I'm going to give you what I think, in my professional opinion, is a better definition of fascism in the real world, one that's pretty simple to understand, especially if you have to talk to somebody who says something stupid like fascism is left wing.
uh,
Fascism
that's
is not a left wing political philosophy.
that's part of its definition.
It is by definition
Yeah.
right wing. And the reason why people confuse this is they confuse methods of governance with the ideology, the basic pillars of thought that you must adhere to if you want to be fascist.
Right. Not
So
all authoritarianism is fascist authoritarianism.
that's right. And not, well, we'll talk about this. I don't want to give it up. So let's talk about what his four things, this guy says you have to have if you want to be a strong fascist movie. He said, first of all, the movie has to be, whatever has to happen, in the movie, there has to be a discrete use of violence to get what you want out of government. You have to be violent. If you're not violent, violence is a part and parcel. It is baked into fascism.
Right. And
The
you, just
most
to be
important,
clear for folks listening, he means discreet, not discreet.
yes. You have to actually, in your movies, show the fascist system using violence as a primary way of getting what they want.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is it must be authoritarian.
Right.
That is, there is a centralized government. There's no independence at smaller units. So if you are a democracy based on the principle of federalism, like we are in the United States, it's not authoritarian because states have independence, cities have independence, from the federal government.
Hmm.
So if you're not authoritarian, if you don't have a centralized source of power and no one else can challenge that power, you're not fascist. The third one is it must be ultra nationalist.
Right.
That is the government's primary, one of the government's primary roles is to promote that nation. And I think some people would extend it onto that race as superior. If you're not ultra nationalist, if you're not based on some kind of ethno-linguistic or
Just cultural.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to be ultra nationalist. And the fourth thing is it has to be dictatorial.
Hmm.
You must have a total. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's another one. So you have to be dictatorial. It's not four, it's five here. Um,
You got to have somebody to scapegoat too, don't
well,
you?
we're not there yet. We're getting there
Ah.
too quick. Um, uh, and actually, scapegoating is a part of the next thing that I'm going to do. It's subsumed under the other part of it. So if it's not dictatorial, if they don't have power over every single kind of uh, mechanism of government, then it's not fascist. Um, Societies don't have a choice in what happens. They must carry out what is necessary.
Right.
I think they're missing something here out of fascism, but we'll talk about that later. And the last thing is a big fancy word, which I think he could have used better description of, or he could use a less jargonized word. He said, if your movie is not genetic,
Oh, we lost you there. If it's right at the key moment too. If your movie's not what?
I said, if your movie is not palingenetic,
Okay. Yeah, we totally missed that
yeah,
word. It was so funny. It just cut out right for that word. Okay, tell us what that
that's
means.
hilarious. So palingenetic means that your government has to be interested in a rebirth of society to an ancient or previous set of circumstances.
Yeah, so it's conservative by definition.
So it has to be not about conservatism. It's rebirth. It's
Hmm.
make America great again.
But you're not
That
rebirthing to something new.
no,
It's
no, 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 no.
conservative.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not simply rebirth, it's conservative rebirth.
So that's the point here is that you have to reclaim a past glory
Right.
or return the tribe to purity.
Hmm.
In order to do that, you have to have a scapegoat. You have to have somebody to blame for going astray.
Okay.
And so what this guy says is if you don't follow these five things, you're not a real fascist movie.
Well, this is tricky, right? Because
Yes.
movies are so limited. And this is something I definitely, a direction I wanted to go is does any or virtually any movie fascist society or fascist government do they can we really be sure that any of them are fully fascist? Do they ever give us enough information to even call them fascist? My favorite example of that is, and we just have to sort of accept it even though they don't show us that, is, what does everybody cite? The Empire and Star Wars, right? And that's
Well, it's
because
interesting. Oh, hold on. What I wanted to get to before we get to that discussion
mhm,
is this guy only comes up with two. He says there are only two strong fascist movies.
okay.
Only two. Sorry. He said, so he said, the guy who wrote this article, the website being a sci-fi interfaces, he said there are only two examples of
Mhm.
air quote strong fascism in movies.
Interesting. What?
One of them is Nazi and the other one is non-Nazi. He said the only one that gets all five dimensions is The Man in the High Castle from TV.
Well, that's kind of unfair though, because if you're using Nazis, you're shorthanding fascism. We all know who Nazis are. We all know
I know.
how they worked. So all you have
Well,
to do is say Nazi and you have a correct representation of
right.
fascism by definition.
But he also comes up with one which is non-Nazi. So it's a correct representation of fascism, but there's a non-Nazi. So to look at his example with the Man in the High Castle, it says, yes, the Nazis in Man in the High Castle are thoroughly violent. It's the main force they use to affect government policy.
Mhm.
Authoritarian, you've got a straight up, strict father, hyper empowered government. Ultra nationalist, yes, well, we understand that. They're attacking the idea of anything but a an Aryan nationality. And what's interesting about the Man in the High Castle, and they do this in the book and the movie, is there are lots of tensions between the Nazis after they win and the other fascist ideology, the Japanese,
Mhm.
because they're not Aryan. Dictatorial, Hitler's still alive. Palingenetic is, yes, they're trying to cleanse the Jewish and other undesirable for the population. And they still have what's called a Lebensborn program, a program to make sure that proper people are uh, have a higher birth rate.
Mhm.
The second one, he says, is the strongest non-Nazi version.
Okay, now this is the one that's got me more interested because I still think the Nazi thing is a cop out, but this one I'm really curious about.
The Klingons in Star Trek Discovery.
Now that gets to a conversation I want to have. I don't know that I agree,
Well,
but it's fascinating part of the conversation.
let me tell you the 5 reasons why he says this.
Hmm.
One, obviously, the Klingons are violent. They're a warrior of race. This is a principle in their lives. And
Hmm.
they live their situation in a militaristic society.
Right.
They're authoritarian. They have an honor culture, but they all bow to the will of the leaders of
Hmm.
their houses. They're ultra nationalists
Yeah.
because they want to conquer the galaxy. They look down on other cultures. Dictatorial. First Tukuvma, then Vok, then Kol, then Laurel each take control as leader of the Klingons. And then last is palingenetic because Takuvma is explicitly trying to reunite the houses to take back their position against the Federation and their lost glory. The Empire's resurrection is a main goal. The only thing they're missing is a scapegoat.
Hmm. Yeah. Now the Klingons, let's talk about them. And then I want to go back. Well, I want to talk this number two you brought up.
Yeah.
Um, again, I think if you're talking literal Nazis in a story, you inherit everything we know about Nazis. I mean, real fascism is in Captain America, the first Avengers, because it has Nazis and we all know they're fascists. We know who Nazis are.
Well,
So
but
that's a
see,
little bit cheap, I
no,
think.
it's interesting. He differentiates. He says the real enemy in Captain America is not the Nazis. It's
Okay.
Hydra.
Right, who are still, but you still have a Nazi society that or a fascist society just by virtue of being Nazis. So
Well,
that's what I mean by inheriting it. You don't have to
well,
tell that story.
yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about that. You say
Hmm.
that the he's just saying that in science fiction depictions, the only two things that follow all five of these dimensions are those two examples. Now we can talk about it in a second. We can talk
Okay.
about it now. Why he's wrong, because I think he's wrong about this,
Well, let's talk about the Klingons for a minute, though, because I'm glad you
and
brought
I
that
think
up.
his yeah, please,
Because the Klingons are complicated. And one of the things that makes them complicated, thankfully, is the only point. If you got to accept this as canon, but the only point where somebody tries to flesh out a more three-dimensional Klingon society, and not just society, but Klingon race, Klingon
right,
species, is in the undiscovered country,
yeah,
right? You've got hints of to some degree, there's a ruling council. There may be democracy. It's to some degree, to some limited degree, because this, you know, um, the new chancellor after the first one is assassinated is his daughter. Now, I don't think she went out with a batleth and killed everybody to get that position. The council decided. So that's what's going on with that. How does that work? The
right,
I mean, just as an aside, you have the Klingons in that look every which way, which I appreciate because Klingons have looked every which way over the years. And here's a movie where we see all different kinds, and I like that. But so there's the issue of, well, that's really the big one, is the issue of its governance. How does its governance work? That's not consistent with how we see them later. And how we see them later brings us to another big question that we'll have to get into, and maybe not right away, because I know the big questions are starting to pile up here. But is the idea of fascism in fiction completely time bound? I mean, the Klingons in Star Trek, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they're like an old style fantasy warrior culture that collides with science fiction, right? They're the Sumerians in Conan,
Well, to me,
right?
it's like the Romans and the barbarians.
Right. Okay.
The
But
barbarians are uncultured, uncivilized. They're the problem.
mhm,
And if you don't beat the barbarians back, then you're gonna lose all civilization.
sure.
Um,
But there you go.
but the thing
We're
is that barbarian civilization is just different than Rome.
right. Well, and our barbarians are the Sumerians. Are the Sumerians who meet a lot of these definitions here? Are the Sumerians fascists? Are we seeing, fascism in Game of Thrones? Is some of this would meet some of those definitions, but we would never think of it that because there are these fantasy different context uh civilizations or
Well,
cultures.
here's the problem, right?
Hmm.
So uh, the problem here is that fascism existed before the Nazis. First fascist dictatorship is in Portugal,
Okay, well, and you've got, I mean, Franco was before them, wasn't he?
and Franco,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
before that, Mussolini.
yeah. Well, Mussolini, right, right.
But
I was thinking, yeah,
the problem with the audience for these movies is they think fascist equals Nazi.
right. But
It's
I
not
don't think
true.
I think the movies actually, I would defend them and say they just think Nazi equals fascist.
No, no, I think most people when they think about fascism, they just think about the Nazis.
Hmm. And
Maybe
thinking
not the
that's
writers
it.
of the films,
Right.
but the audience will say, and the point is that Nazism is a specific kind of fascism.
Right.
Fascism. Not all fascists are Nazis, but all Nazis are fascists.
Right. Right. Which is why it's easy to shorthand in fiction.
That's
Make them
right.
look like
And
the
and
Nazis.
that's why your criticism of saying the Nazis are actual fascists is, well, yes, of course they are. That's the way it's going to be. Um, but I think the reason why his idea of strong fascism falls apart is it doesn't allow for variations on the basic principles of fascism.
Hmm.
Because basically, if every fascist society has to be ultra nationalist, then your version of fascism is going to be culture specific.
Hmm. Sure.
People don't understand that the Imperial Japanese government in World War II was as fascist as Germany was.
Hmm.
And that's because
Right.
their ultra nationalist conception was that if you're not Japanese, not if you're not Aryan, but if you're not Japanese, then you aren't part of the center of culture, which is hilarious because once the DNA started happening, so that in the year I think it was 800, the Japanese kicked all the non-Japanese off the island, right?
Yeah. Right. I
And
do know
so
that.
technically, if they really succeeded at that, if you go back and you test the population of Japanese now that you have DNA testing, they should all be native Japanese, right?
Right. Well, of
You know
course
what
it
they found?
didn't happen.
Almost everybody who was considered a native Japanese was from Korea.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah, that did not work. But it's like if you go to Latin America, if you're in Latin America and you're in a specific country, there's a whole list about who's more Latin and who isn't.
Hmm.
Right. So, the Argentinians think, oh, well, they're the most Latin, but everybody else, and there's actually a hierarchy.
Hmm.
So, really, kind of the difficult thing in understanding what's fascist and what's not fascist is everybody automatically goes, oh, well, if you're not like the Nazis, you're not fascist.
Yeah, I
So that
don't think
means,
that's, I don't know. I don't think I would agree with that at all, actually.
oh, I think
Um,
most people, when they think of fascism, they think of the Nazi
oh,
Party.
they totally do, but those are two different statements. And it's one thing to say most people think of Nazis. Of course they do, but it's another thing to say, therefore they won't think of other things as fascist. And I think I don't think that's the case.
I
I,
didn't. That's not what I mean. What I mean
okay.
is that if you tell Americans that our president is fascist, they'll go, "No, he's not, because he's not like the Nazis."
I don't think people use it that way. I just think they'd say, no, he's not.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I think it's just blankness.
Well, it
My
gets a lot more confusing because those people don't know what Nazis or fascists are and what they aren't.
Right, right.
And we'll talk
They
about that
just
in a
think
second.
fascists are bad guys.
Yeah, and we'll
Um,
talk about that in a second when later when I talk about what I think the better definition of fascism is.
mhm. So to talk about this, because we're going to keep talking Nazis here because we can't
Yeah,
help it. And the reason we can't help it is because, as you say, you ask the average person, what's fascism? Oh, it's Nazi. Nazi equals fascist. Fascist equals Nazi. And I think because of that in fiction, you see that used as a tool. You see it used as shorthand, which is what
yeah,
I was saying before, which is why I was sort of objecting to his definition.
right.
So, and all you have to do, you don't just have to have Nazis, but you have to, if you can drop in the trappings of Nazism, then you can sort of in a plot context mentally fill that in and not have to demonstrate it. And the perfect example of that, I think, is the Star Wars universe, is the Empire, where who knows if they're fascist? We never get a sense of how they actually work. In fact, the few bits we get suggest that maybe they're not. But they look like Nazis. They're supposed to look like Nazis. They were presented to that. So we don't have to be shown. We can
Well,
go
what's
into
interesting
the
about that
story
is,
deciding that they're fascist.
well, but the thing about that is this: what did Lucas say they're based on?
I don't know. I assume Nazis.
Nope.
No, what did he say? I thought they were based on Nazis.
Star Wars. In Star Wars, the rebellion is the Viet Cong, and the Empire is America.
Really?
Yes,
That's interesting.
that is the model for the Empire. The Empire is the United States government,
Hmm.
and the rebellion is a ragtag bunch of people who have no advantages in society. So he said that is a direct allegory. The
Huh.
direct allegory toward the empire and the rebellion is the rebellion or the Viet Cong, just a whole bunch of people who just want to survive, and the empire is the United States of America.
Well, I don't know if that contradicts my point. I think it just adds to it. I think maybe the
Well, I think so too,
commentary.
because,
Yeah.
and we're going to get to this later on. I think a lot of people who don't understand fascism but think they do refer to the methods the national government used.
Yeah.
Talk about later, every government has ever used these kinds of methods. And
Um,
so it's really important to understand that you're talking about fascism, you're talking about a set of ideas,
mhm.
or not even necessarily the policies that you implement. But if you're not following these four ideas, that those are the things that are fundamental to fascism. And so I think a lot of people talk about methods, and I think this is part of the problem with Star Wars. Part of the problem with Star Wars is it's deliberately, I think, deceptive. Because if he revealed that, the whole point of the story was to make to use this an allegory of the rebellion being the Viet Cong and the United States being the empire, is
Mhm.
he had to hide that, because if he came out and said that's exactly what this is, nobody would see the movie.
Right, right. And it would be so controversial
And
and
so one of the ways to hide that is to use the production design for the bad guys to look like Nazi uniforms.
yeah. Well, and he may be drawing some sort of direct comparison there. I mean, I would
That's
get
true.
the
He might
sense that
be.
he is. Yeah, if he's gonna go that route, he must be. The jackbooted thugs and all.
Right. Right. So it, there's a lot of confusion about what fascism is and fascism isn't
Mm-hmm.
out
Boy, is
there.
there.
And man, I'm telling you, some people are doing it on purpose, and they're all on the right wing. By definition, fascism is a right wing ideology.
Right.
And the number one thing they say is, well, why is it called the National Socialist German
Oh,
Workers'
I know.
Party?
I'm surprised we don't hear that one more often. And I think it's just because so many folks that would throw that around are so uneducated. They don't
Well,
even know.
I have the part of the internet, part of the problem with the internet is they think you going out and reading websites is the same thing as learning how to do research.
Oh, well, sort of,
And,
unless
and
you start talking to Chat GPT.
and that's well, even so, I mean, but let me just tell you that Elon Musk shows that even Chat GPT is dangerous. Even AI programs are dangerous
Well, his AI, right, because it can
because
read it.
he's gone in several times when it comes out with things that make him look bad, and he's changed it.
Right. Oh yeah, and it's blown up in his face too.
Sure, it has, but the point is that A, AI is like any other sort of programming. What you put in is what you're going to get out. It's garbage in, garbage out. Just because it's AI doesn't mean that principle doesn't apply. What you feed AI is going to be what you get out of your AI.
To
See,
a large extent, but that's a conversation for another day.
yeah,
But yes,
this
we'll
is why
go with
not.
it. For purposes of what you're saying, we'll definitely go with that.
But I mean, so let's get back to why people are confused about this.
Hmm.
The Nazis put the word socialism and workers in there. Why? Because the most effective ideology in post World War I Germany was communism.
Right.
They are effective at recruiting people. They're effective at organizing people. And this efficiency and this effectiveness goes on into resisting the Nazis. The only groups which were successful in resisting the Nazis in a systematic, effective way during World War II, during occupations, was the communist groups. They're the only ones who had any measure of success.
Hmm.
This was largely cut out of our history books for a long time because we wanted to undercut the power of communist groups post World War II. But the reason why the Nazis included the word socialist and workers in their party is to attract young, idealistic people who could be easily manipulated. And that's
Hmm.
the reason why they added the color red to their symbology because they saw these guys actually organizing and succeeding, and so they wanted to co-opt these young people who were just looking for an answer to the poverty and difficulty in the Weimar post World War One world.
Post, yeah.
And to which I say, okay, so the name of North Korea is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Do you think it's a democracy? That's the serious question. The unserious way to answer that is to say, "Oh, so tell me about the titmouse. I mean, do you think the mouse has those? Do you think it's a
Oh,
bird? What is it?" So you must have
okay.
a lot of problem with that idea. Socialism. Oh, and then people say, "Well, yeah, but Mussolini started out as a socialist." Yeah, what was the name of he gave to his own party? Did he call it the Socialisti? No, he called it the Fascisti. So that's a deception. What I always tell people is if you believe the Nazis were left wing, you're a victim of both Nazi propaganda and conservative Republican propaganda.
Yeah.
It's just not real. The whole point of attacking the Soviet Union was to destroy a very far left wing ideology, communism. And we'll talk about what the difference is, but because some people say, well, yes, but Stalin was really fascist. And I think there's
No,
validity to that,
he was
except
authoritarian. I mean,
no,
authoritarian is its own thing.
the big difference here is not author, and this is where you talk about the difference between methods and ideas, but the biggest difference between socialism or communism and the Nazis is political economic arrangements.
Well, that is very true. Corporate versus non-corporate, even if the corporate power is
Well,
under some
the big
sort of
difference
central. Yeah.
is private property.
Right, right. Which is the
In
corporations are
Germany,
an extension of, sure.
Germany, private property is allowed so long as your company does not deviate from the right ideology.
Right.
If you're going to be a proper Nazi company, then we'll let you keep your stuff. If you're
Hmm.
not, then we're going to take it from you.
Hmm.
So there is private property allowed as long as it follows the right ideology.
Right, right,
In
right. And that's a fundamental difference. That's a huge
this is
difference.
the defining
Hmm.
difference. The other side of that is in the communist world, there is no private property.
Right. Well,
All
that's the
property
distinction.
belongs to the state.
Hmm.
And
That's
so,
where the difference is.
and this is and that's completely opposite. That is completely opposite. Now, one of the most important things to understand about these big name ideologies, these big category ideologies, is there's no such thing as any of them being pure.
Yeah. No,
These are
I didn't
all
think of it that way,
archetypes,
but you're right. It's true.
and you're going to have variation within those archetypes.
Sure. Well, every human institution is going to have a very quantum element to it.
Yeah, that's why I always talk about, when people say, well, we live in a capitalist system, I said, no, we don't. They're
Hmm.
like, oh, yes, of course we do. And I said, oh, really? Because true capitalists would be okay with slavery.
Hmm. Yeah.
True capitalists would be okay with pedophilia being legal as long as it's run as a business.
As long as it's, I was going to say making money off it would be.
True capitalism would allow no prohibition of any substance which could be abused.
Yeah, it's, when we're talking pure here, it's sort of like
That's right.
talking about pure democracy being
And,
directly
and that's
opposite.
right.
But we still exist in a democracy.
Right.
It's just
So,
not.
so,
Yeah.
so we're not talking about absolutes here. We're talking
Mhm.
about gradations,
Right.
except if you say that fascism is a left-wing ideology. It's just not. It's
Right.
just not. That's like saying, wow, it's really cold this winter. I mean, it's really hot this winter.
Hmm.
No, it's not winter. It's like saying, oh, this water is really dry. No, it's not. Although there are some people who argue that water is not wet, that things which are touched by water are wet.
Yeah, I know that whole thing. That's
Well,
yeah,
the
that's
other thing that
hilarious.
makes me crazy, and then we'll go back to what we're talking about, is the argument that the proper way to phrase the popular adage about choices is that you should never say you can't have your cake and eat it too. That the only logical way to say this is you can't eat your cake and have it too.
Oh
To which
no,
I
cause
say,
and effect.
to
They're
which
all
I
mixed
say
up.
that's not true because the word have means to possess.
Sure.
And so it works either direction. You can say you can't eat your cake and have it too. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And of course, once you know the origin of that argument, you understand why it's completely insane.
Hmm.
The origin of that argument is the Unabomber.
Huh.
Anyway, so
Well, let's talk about how some of this stuff appears in fiction
yeah,
and um and how it I mean, you've laid out there that it only exists in two examples, or at least
I haven't.
you
That's
were
what that specific author said. I don't agree
okay.
with that. I
Okay.
don't agree with that at all.
Hmm. And I've argued that you can borrow a lot from what we think of as fascism to backfill it as a basis for bad guys. And you don't have to show it all. Um, but so I mean, let's look at some of these in that context. One that jumps to mind is the Hunger Games, right?
Yes.
Um, is is that a fascist society? Are we seeing all pieces of it, or are we just being shown enough that we can assume the rest and we don't actually need to have it laid out for us? You know what
And
I
you're
mean?
getting to my big criticism of the argument this guy makes. This guy makes the argument that unless you have all five of these things, you cannot be fascist.
Hmm. But do you have to see all those five things? Can't you imply them just by
Oh
virtue
no.
of having
Well,
two or three,
and this
right?
is exactly what I'm saying. There
Hmm.
are some things which are subsumed under it, right? So another example, but well, we can stick to the Hunger Games. And
Hmm.
one of the fundamental ideas of the of fascism is that you have one leader, and that leader, everything else has to submit to him.
Hmm.
Laws, social conventions, norms, institutions, individual behavior, everything has to fall to the will of that leader.
Hmm.
You don't have to say that. All you have to do is show it.
Hmm. Right.
And in the Hunger Games, that's true.
Yeah.
There is no other form of authority than the president of
Right.
the country.
And I mean you can maybe say it wants to be a fascist state because the whole purpose of the Hunger Games is to try to create this populist, well, except it's successful until it's not, to create that sort of, populist element to it of we are special, or at least those of us in the sort of center culture. I can't think of the districts
Well,
now.
I think a great example of that is the inner the core worlds in Firefly.
Yeah, yeah, I think and again, they don't show us every single thing. They don't give us the fascist checklist, but they give us, enough that we can infer the rest.
That's right.
Hmm.
That's right. And the danger here is that there's a significant portion, at least in the United States, that doesn't make that connection anymore.
Yeah, no, and I wonder if a lot of these, there's always been a significant portion that never has, you know?
Yeah,
I
you're right.
I don't think they,
But
I
but
mean, a lot of people would say what's fascism. If you said what's fascism, they wouldn't even know that, we talk about how everybody thinks of Nazis. A lot of people don't even think of Nazis. They just don't know what to do with that word. They just think
well,
it's bad
they don't know
guys.
what it is because they
Yeah,
think, well, they think the Soviet Union was fascist.
right. Just
It's
because
like,
it's
no,
bad. It's bad guys.
right, right, yeah,
Mm.
that it's bad. The other part is this though, and I think part of the reason why there's confusion is so people who support fascism and want to argue they don't support that fascism is they talk about the swastika. The swastika has a much older origin than the Germans.
Right. They just
But
turned
I'm
it a
telling
little
you, any day
sideways.
now, you put a swastika on a shirt, they're not going to think about the Hindus.
Oh, no, it's wrecked forever. It's like the name Adolf. It's
Right.
done. It's toast.
People don't know that one of the biggest movie stars in the 30s was a guy named Adolphe Menjou.
Mhm.
You're not naming your kids Adolf anymore.
No, no, that's done. Swastikas are done. That name's done.
Oh, and here's the other thing that's done. Did you see what Alex Jones did recently?
Oh God, I try to avoid looking at Alex Jones. Well, that's
He's now
not true.
sporting
Sometimes he
a,
can be entertaining.
he's now sporting a Hitler mustache,
Oh, he is?
walking around in public saying, "Well, there's no reason why I can't have this mustache." Wrong.
Oh,
Sorry, you can't ever have that mustache again. Charlie
I've
Chaplin had that mustache before Hitler. Now he's got it. Charlie Chaplin is not going to be associated with that mustache.
I have got to look this up. I want to see this. Okay, come on. Yeah, yeah, yep. I want to see the images, and there it is. Oh
Yep.
my God, that's amazing. I love it.
That guy is desperate for attention because essentially he's got no money left,
Yeah,
which is the proper condition for him.
but he's still got a following. He's still got a huge following.
Well, sure. So does Hitler.
Right.
Uh, Here's the other thing I want to talk about when in regard to Nazis. I think it's terribly misleading to talk about Nazis and neo-Nazis. I'm sorry, no such thing. There are no neo-Nazis. They are all Nazis. And this is one of the other
Yeah.
arguments that I find completely void of any reliability or validity
Hmm.
is they say, well, he can't be Nazis because Nazis were restricted to a specific certain historical circumstances.
Yeah.
No, wrong.
Yeah, and the term doesn't
Fascist
make
is fascist.
yeah, the term doesn't make sense otherwise. I get it. I mean, there's this sense that in World War II, Nazis were exterminated. So therefore, Nazis now are something a little different. They're
Can't be
neo-Nazis.
a Nazi
I
because it's not
get
what
that.
it is.
Yeah, but it's not I mean, it's like the Klan. The Klan arose and then it disappeared and then it came back.
Yeah,
It wasn't the Neo Clan that came back. It was the Klan. Yeah, they had slightly different flavor to them, but we
yeah.
didn't call them the Neo Clan. They were still the Klan. So I mean, you're right about that. Nazis are Nazis.
Nazi is Nazi is a Nazi.
Yeah,
And by saying neo-Nazi, they imply that they aren't as bad as the original Nazis. Nope, they're every bit as bad as the original
right,
Nazis.
right. Yeah.
Some other good examples. We talked about Firefly. We talked about Hunger Games. I want to talk about one that is explicitly fascist in literature. And this is a great one because the fictional version, the literary
Yeah,
version
yeah,
is
where you're going.
definitely pro-fascist. And the movie version is definitely making fun of the literary version, and that's
Right.
Starship Troopers.
Yeah. Now, Starship Troopers, of course, Heinlein wouldn't have called himself fascist, but he was promoting a
Well,
fascist
here's the
idealism.
thing. There's an old saying from pre-Nazi Germany. What do you call 12 Nazis and a guy who's having dinner with them? 13 Nazis.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I'm just saying that word doesn't get dropped. But
Right. It
yeah, but
doesn't get
it's still, you're absolutely right.
this. This is a book promoting fascist values.
Yes.
Period. End of sentence. Heinlein is explicitly saying, without using the word fascism, the four principles involved in fascism.
Mhm.
Period. End of sentence. This is a pro-fascist book. He is advocating things like, well, you can't have citizenship until you've been in the armed forces.
Right. Those are citizens.
That is as fascist as it gets. Until you've earned your citizenship, you do not count.
Mm,
And the thing about Nazi society is your citizenship really comes from uh, being in a certain set of physiological characteristics.
mhm.
Except, of course, if you're the Austrian who doesn't look at all like that.
All right.
But I think it's interesting these societies which proposed racial purity. The two biggest ones were national purity. The two biggest ones didn't fit into that nationality. Hitler was an Austrian and Stalin was a Georgian.
Oh, right. That's right.
And tell a
Forgot about
Russian
that.
tell a Russian he's George, or tell a Russian a Georgian is Russian. See what happens.
Hmm.
So really, I mean, you can't escape uh, pro-fascist thinking in Heinlein's book. Heinlein
Yeah.
wrote some great science fiction, but he was not a big believer in democracy.
No, no.
He was
And
not.
and and I mean, let's talk about the movie now because you're right about the movie. And the thing that it's obvious in the movie, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's
he's
not.
I think it's completely
Well,
obvious.
that's
Es-
right, and that's because we understand really. We have an idea of what fascism is. A lot of people don't, and this happened in the critics. A lot of the critics of this movie didn't realize this was
None of them got it.
satire.
It got trashed.
Yep,
And none of them got it. It's
nobody understood. This is a parody of fascism. This is a comic book send up of fascism. And you have to understand the director, Paul
yeah,
Verhoeven,
Verhoeven, yeah.
he's Dutch. He was born in 1938.
Well, and
He lived under a Nazi regime. He's not going to glorify the
of
Nazis.
course not. And he directed RoboCop. I
Right.
mean, didn't they see RoboCop? They know his style and they know that it's satirical. And he just was doing the same thing with fascism in Starship Troopers, and I think it was obvious as hell because it followed the same sort of style as RoboCop. And RoboCop, well, I'd be willing to bet. I don't know this, but I bet there were critics who did the same thing with RoboCop. I mean, it's
Oh, I'm sure
so
there were.
yeah, there must have been, but I just I just feel like the critics were so stupid. I mean, I don't think he could have been more plain about what he was doing, honestly.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I don't think, I think it was obvious. You go to that movie and you say, wow, he's really sending him up here. He's
Yeah.
really making fun of this kind of culture. Um, but there's a lot of confusion about this. You guys already talked about in a previous episode uh, how, and we've talked about it too. How is it these guys think that Homelander in in the boys is somebody you should be using as a role model? I mean, it got so
Right.
bad that the creator of the comic books had to come out and say, "Yeah, all you alpha boys,
Hmm.
Homelander's the bad guy."
Yeah, he got creeped out
He's
for sure.
not the good guy.
Hmm.
He's not the guy you should be going, oh, I want to be like him. It's my deal is in our generation, everybody grew up seeing Archie Bunker. And Archie Bunker was a character to point out the absurdity of the ideas that he had, the misogynistic, racist, uh, you know, ideas about society.
Yeah.
And the thing is, um, somehow people our age went, oh, that's a role model we should follow.
Hmm.
No, did you not understand this?
Well, the generation watching it, I mean, the baby boomers, they certainly understand it. They never, I mean, yeah, they got it,
Well, I don't
and all
know.
the right
I have to
wingers
tell
took
you
it
that
very hard.
the baby boomers to me are the only example. I mean, really, who was it that elected Trump? Baby boomers. Who was it that elected Obama? Baby boomers.
Yeah,
It's like now uh, they're getting revenge for the hippies.
yeah.
It's very strange to me that the baby boomers are the people who support. This is hard to believe, but it's true. Baby boomers are really the biggest support that Bernie Sanders has.
I partly agree with that. I think right now, um, well, I think the generations, both of them that follow Gen X, are more complicated. Um, I think um, I think you
Yeah,
see
but
a lot of Bernie Sanders support among younger folks, even younger than me, who are looking for something different and are looking for some sort of honesty
I'm gonna
in
debunk that.
politicians. But I also think a lot of them, a lot of the young males, are the Charlie Kirk heads looking
Well, I'm
for
going to debunk
some.
that in general.
Mhm.
I think that's true of Generation Z,
Mhm.
but I'm going to debunk it, and I'm going to do it two ways. In 2015, when Bernie Sanders met with demographers to ask them about should I run for president, they told him there's only one group that's going to actively support you, and that's upper middle class white folks.
Yeah, but they were wrong. They
Well, no,
were
they weren't.
flat out wrong. If you look at the example of Vermont, they were wrong from the get-go.
They weren't. So look at, I think it's Connecticut. Connecticut, 82% of youth that voted for in the primaries voted for Sanders.
Mhm.
What percent of turnout from youth did you get?
Oh, shit. You always
18,
get shit turnout. That's
18%.
But he
So
got
sure, he
more
got
than others get.
82% of the youth vote,
Mhm.
but 82 times 18%.
No, but that's different. That's that he still had more support from that youth vote. But the youth vote, if you're a political organizer, has always been this mythical thing. I'm going to win on the youth vote because the youth likes me better. They don't come out to vote, but that doesn't change the fact that they do like him better. And
But
what
but
you're
the thing
starting,
is, what good is do you really have support of these ideas if people aren't going to vote for you? It's
I,
irrelevant whether or not you're supported in a hypothetical way. The only support that counts, and the reason why they were right, is because he didn't get the votes necessary in a broad enough coalition to win the nomination.
Yeah, I think that's just a function of turnout. I don't think it changes the fact that that support was there. I just think it creates in an electoral context that that support was irrelevant. But if Nazis aren't voting and Nazis didn't used to vote, it doesn't change the fact that there are Nazis there. It
Oh no,
doesn't mean that they
I agree.
don't
I
vote. It
agree.
doesn't mean that they don't exist and that their ideology isn't true just because they don't vote. It just means
But
that they're not having a voting impact. And
but when
that's
you
what happens with the youth. Oh my God. I can't tell you how many times over my career in politics that I would hear the Democratic candidate say, well, we're going to win because we're going to get the youth vote. You're going to get all the youth support you can imagine. And you know how many of them are actually going to come out to vote? Like nothing.
none.
Yeah, nothing. Now that's
Now,
starting to change, but
well, but see,
anyways.
the reason why they cling to that is this: over the what percentage of the youth turned out for Obama's second election?
Oh, there still wasn't, but I think it was no, they
Oh
still
no,
there
it was
wasn't
big.
turnout.
It
It
was
was
66% of the youth vote.
66% of the youth vote. Well, 66% of the youth vote, but still, how many of the electorate were youth?
That's the point, though,
That's
is
different.
the reason. No, I agree with that. I'm
Mm,
just saying the reason why they cling to this idea of the youth vote being what wins is because they look at statistics like that.
hmm
In the first one, it was 60%. First Obama election, it was 60%. And then it was 66% after that. But
hmm
these kinds of statistics can be really shocking if you dig into them. The best example is, when was the last time a majority of white women voted for a Democratic president?
The majority of white women.
Yeah,
I think it may have been first time, the first Trump, Hillary. They voted for Hillary.
Carter.
It wasn't Obama, was it?
Carter.
Carter. That's
The
the
last time white women voted in a majority for a I mean, for a Democratic candidate was to Carter.
That goes against the general wisdom. That's interesting.
Yes, it does. That's why you make a really great point here. It's
hmm
very difficult for anybody to plan future elections on previous election results.
hmm
I think that's a dangerous thing to do. Anyway, we've kind of lost the topic here.
Oh my God, you're right. We have. Um,
So when we talk about fascism in movies, and you make a great kind of transition to my definition. So if you don't mind, we talk about my decision now. I mean,
yeah,
my
go
definition.
go for it.
Okay, so I think the best definition I have run into, and I wish I could remember where I saw, because it's not my idea originally, but I think it's the best one possible, is that there are four dimensions to fascism that build the foundation of that as an ideology. Now, let's understand that methods are not an ideology. Suppressing those who disagree with you, every government has ever done that.
Mm,
Democracies have suppressed their dissenting views. You know, Lincoln suspended habeas corpus.
right.
Um, so suppressing your opponents is not a thing that makes fascism fascism. That's a
hmm
method. Using force against your opponents. Every form of government has ever done that. That's not an ideology. That's a method of enforcing an ideology.
That's
So,
true. Now, I will say I don't think you. I think they are probably necessary components of fascism, but you're right. Everybody does it.
well, they're necessary, but they're not necessary and sufficient.
Right, right.
And
Of course not.
what that
Yeah.
means is that other systems may use them, but if you're talking about fascism, that the ideology you use, violence has to be the fundamental instrument of getting your political goals, of realizing your ideology. All political systems use violence. So the use of violence in politics is not a defining characteristic of an ideology. So methods are not ideas. It's the ideas which make it distinct from other kinds of political arrangements, not the methods you use.
Oh,
And
sure. You
so
can't have
again,
war
this
between
guy,
good guys and bad guys without the good guys fighting too,
right.
right?
So methods are not ideology. Methods are not ideology. What's
Mhm.
interesting about what you just said is that there is a growing there's a growing principle in politics, and this depends on how you define democracy. But in general, when you look at democracies, they don't fight each other. They don't participate in war less, but they don't fight each other.
Right. That makes total
Okay,
sense. Yeah.
so it's really essential to understand the difference between methods and ideas. So, what are the four main ideas of fascism? The four main ideas are militarization of society, um, the Führer principle, which is that you have one leader that all institutions, all norms, all individual behavior must submit to.
Yeah.
You've got political economic arrangements called corporatism.
Right.
Let's see. So we've got, what's the fourth one?
Fourth one's
Oh,
going to involve the scapegoating,
no.
the
The fourth one,
cultural.
scapegoat is subsumed in the fourth one.
Mhm.
And the fourth one is that there is a superior race or nationality.
Right. Well, that's the flip side. Right.
Well, that's the dominant idea.
Right.
And what you have to do is, in order to enforce that idea, you have to find a group or a number of groups that say you're getting in the way of this. I
Mhm.
don't think rebirth is necessary. I think rebirth is a tool to
Or
get your
or a byproduct or just an inevitable, like I
right.
say, because
So,
fascism tends to be some sort of cultural transformation just inherently. It's like you're talking about methods. That's just a incidental, you
right,
know.
right. So defining an ideology like fascism by methods, no matter what kind of method you talk about, we've all used them.
Sure.
Democracies, uh, fascist systems, communist systems, uh, social democracies, they've all used all of these tools. You cannot define an ideology by the methods they use. That's the end of it. If you do, you lose any real clarity when you talk about the difference in political systems.
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
order for these ideologies to work out, things have to be mutually exclusive. And if you include methods as part of the ideology, there's no difference between any of these ideas.
Hmm.
So fascism is really rests on these four ideas: militarization of society, right?
Hmm.
Everything, the military becomes the most important segment of society. This is why Heinlein primarily is a fascist supporter,
Hmm.
because the whole society is organized around the worship of the military. And boy, is this big now. You know, Pete Hegseth is about to call all these generals and admirals together to give them some kind of talk. Trump is going to be there too. I mean, from a security standpoint, this is incredibly dangerous.
Hmm.
But I guarantee you, he's going to go and try to convince them that if you're not part of this warrior culture, you have to resign. That is militarization of society. Trump wants a military parade, militarization of society, worship of the warrior ethos. This is big in America right now, to idolize the military and make all aspects of society like the military. There are lots and lots of examples of this. The most important part of the empire in Star Wars is the Imperial fleet. Everybody is militarized to one degree or another. Um,
But we don't know if it has that. The big thing missing from Star Wars is we don't know if it has that sort of master race or master cultural
yeah,
element
yeah. This
quality.
this this is
That
why
almost
this.
they almost suggest that's not there because
You're right.
everybody's celebrating. So that's the one that you can't really find in Star
Well, and it's
Wars.
what's interesting about that is that if it's really based on the Viet Cong, and you have to take him at his word, uh, the when we'll get to this in a minute, the political economic arrangements aren't there.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think this one is easy to find in science fiction movies. There are lots of examples of militarized societies
Sure.
um, where every aspect of society worships the military. I think that's easy to find. I don't think you have any hard time finding that in fascist movies. The second one I talked about is the Führer principle.
Hmm.
You know, people look at Dune and they say, "Oh, well, Paul Atreides, he's the hero in this movie, or he's the hero in this set of books." Oh
That's because
no,
people didn't get it.
Dune is exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
If you read the Dune books, they are absolutely clear a cult of personality around a specific heroic leader that defines everything in society is a disaster.
Yeah, it's a bad thing.
It's
Yeah.
a disaster. So that
So
one,
it's
but I do think this is an easy element to understand in terms of examples in the movies. That the idea that you have one leader that decides everything, that's there in the Hunger Games. That's not as much there in Firefly, but as you said,
No, we have
I
no
think it,
idea actually.
yeah. But I think that you're not far off from assuming there is one
Hmm. Yeah. I think it
because
feels that way. You can backfill that. It's that
yeah,
thing where it brings in enough of it, it feels like it's there.
right.
Yeah.
The third one. The third one is political arrangements. And this, as we've talked about before, this is the difference between democratic societies and socialist societies. If you wanted to really base this out and look at it very simply, uh, capitalist societies allow private property.
Hmm.
And that's the dominant arrangement for political economy, that the government is supposed to stay out of business's way so people can have maximum freedom to create whatever wealth they want.
Hmm.
So private property is king. On the far end of that, you have a communist society or a communist government where there is no private property. All property belongs to the state. There is no individual ownership. If you come a little bit right from capitalism, you get what's called social democracy or socialism. And in socialism, you allow private property, but not for the most essential parts of the economy. Transportation, education, infrastructure, that is all owned entirely by the government. And to the right of that, you get fascism. And fascism says the state will protect private property if and only if the owners of that private property adhere to the rest of our political philosophy.
Hmm.
And now, what's interesting is you don't have to have fascist government to have this arrangement. But if you don't have this arrangement, you're not fascist. And the examples that I might give you would be kind of the four tigers of the Asian economy: South Korea, which had a dictatorship, but it wasn't fascist. South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore. I can't think of the fourth off the top of my head. And so those exhibited a corporatist kind. I mean, I'm sorry, those exhibited all the other elements of fascism, but they didn't have a corporatist economy. So corporatism, this idea that the state will allow private property if and only if you have the right political set of goals. Because, this is the reason why a lot of the owners of these businesses got in giant trouble after the Nazi regime with the Nuremberg trials, is because they were allowed to keep their money and make millions and millions and millions of dollars on slave labor because they said, "Oh yes, you're right." Now this is
Hmm.
really going on right now in corporate society in America.
Hmm.
You've got tech firms, you've got all the big major tech firms have kowtowed to Trump. They've all done that, and that's because they want to keep making. But what that means is that these companies are uh, they're responsible for what's going on. They are openly bending to fascism to keep making money. That's a terrible thing. Now Disney found out that there are ways to push back on this. Disney um, Disney took Jimmy Kimmel off the air because Trump and Brendan Carr went, "Oh, well, you criticized Charlie Kirk, so you're out."
Right. He didn't even criticize Charlie Kirk.
No, he didn't at all.
Yeah.
He did not at all. He criticized Republicans.
Yep.
And he criticized Republicans rightly. But the thing is, that was a clear violation of the First Amendment. If government is using its power to threaten the network's license to broadcast for political speech,
Yeah.
that's the First Amendment. That is
Yes.
government censorship of somebody who does not agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clear cut. People will say, "Oh, well, it's a private company. There were consequences." No, that's Roseanne. That's what happened to Roseanne.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
So,
Good
so
comparison. Yeah.
Roseanne was, well, she's out there screaming now. saying that
Mm,
her, they did the same thing. No, they didn't.
yeah, she's crazy.
Rose, Roseanne was a victim of the consequences of her free speech.
Hmm.
Her free speech was not denied her because the government didn't threaten to take the license of the broadcaster. The broadcaster went, yeah, you can't say that and work for this company. You're out.
Yeah.
That is an example of a private company. This is the reason why the First Amendment doesn't apply to private, generally doesn't apply to private businesses. It only applies to government institutions. You're only protected by the government taking away your speech. Kimmel had his speech taken away from him. So it's not the same. A lot of conservative commentators, they don't understand logical equivalence. They think if the outcome is the same, then the cases are the same. It's not
Yeah,
true.
that's just dumb.
It's just not true.
Well,
So that one I think is very, it's easy to see those. Although, a lot of movies don't cover that.
yeah, there's one that is though, and I do want to start wrapping up because we're
Yeah.
we've been talking for a while.
I'm
But
talking about the
while
last
you're
one.
talking and you're giving me these four, I'm thinking there is one genre property that checks every single button, and they don't leave you to backfill it. At
Right.
some point in the series, and it's a long series, they check them all off, and that's Harry Potter.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so the last one, and then we'll talk about why I think this is a better way to understand fascism. And the last one is uh, the idea of nationalism, or national um, national or ethnic or racial superiority.
Mhm.
Again, they don't talk a lot about this. I can think of an example of where you see it actually, and this is a good little example of this, is in the TV show Angel.
Mhm.
The episode where the Irish guy dies, Doyle.
I should. I don't remember
Doyle
my
dies
Angel very
because
well at all. Angel didn't grab me the way Buffy did.
Doyle, so Doyle is the demon that kind of convinces, uh, that kind of helps Angel help humanity.
Okay.
And Doyle is half demon, and he's half demon of a specific kind. So he discovers a group of these demons, and they're hiding on Earth, or they're hiding in our dimension because there's a Nazi group coming to kill them all.
Mhm.
And it's Nazi because they have all the same things. And so this is a very clear example of the idea of a racial, or in this specific case, a species, uh, a species superiority. I
Mhm.
think there are lots of examples of this. I think this is probably
Oh
the
yeah,
one that's
yeah,
the easiest to find in fascist
yeah.
groups.
And
And
that's totally yeah.
let me talk to you about why I think this is the best definition of fascism, especially to deal with anybody who says the United States is not fascist. Boy, Republican policies fall all into this set of ideas. And the reason why this is better is because if you if you come up with this idea of kind of a framework for definition for a political philosophy, or a set of political ideas, or an ideology, is it needs to capture as many examples of that are out there in nature as possible. And I think the problem with the idea that the guy at the beginning from science fiction, sci-fi interactions, is that his definition of fascism is so restrictive that it's almost impossible to find examples of fascism anywhere.
Yeah, all right. He over
That's not
defines.
useful if you're trying to say, okay, we've got this category, what things fit in it. You got two categories, and one of them has almost no examples, and one of them has a lot more examples while still sticking to the same principle requirements, LE principle. Then that second one is a superior model.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you apply these four things, there are lots of examples of fascism.
I don't know if
Unfortunately,
they're any as good as Harry Potter, though, because it
no,
really,
I
I
don't
was
think.
thinking it explicitly checks off every box.
Yeah.
Even the property issue, you still have this elite like the Malfoys, and they get to
Mhm.
keep their property. They have their property. They're still the elite, but It has to be in service of the government, of the leader. So I
Yep.
mean that's the one you see left out in a lot of these stories, I think, but even that box is checked. So they
Yeah,
get
you never
everything.
see anybody talk about how the system is fascist in Harry Potter. Nobody talks about that.
Well,
They,
actually, J.K. Rowling did. So
yeah, I'm
there
talking.
was some explicitness there, but viewers, watchers, readers, no, they don't. It's true.
And so I just think this is a really great framework for understanding not just fascism in movies, but fascism in real life.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
you can go through the Trump administration and you can see all four of these things in operation.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, they're all there. And so, if you want to engage with the people who say fascism, Trump can't be fascist, the Republican Party isn't fascist, this gives you kind of a set of tools to deal with. Here's the problem, though. You're not going to convince anybody.
No, not in
You're not.
this era.
No, these people think they know better than anyone else how to do government. And boy, what really scares me about this is the tech bros that all believe this. There is a growing list of very rich, very influential tech bros who literally believe democracy is done.
Oh yeah.
And and not only are they the best people to fix government, they think it's part of their actual mission that they should destroy government. They should
Hmm.
destroy democracy because it doesn't work. And so, man, I'm really thinking of rethinking my attitude toward technology as a result of this. These people really think they know better than you about how government should be run. They
Yeah.
really believe that you are not smart enough to have self-governance.
Hmm.
And boy, and for me, this is a nonpartisan issue.
Should be.
This is a fundamental threat to our society.
Yeah.
Them thinking that because they're good at writing software, they're good at everything. This is another example of what I called, and I've called on this podcast before, the genius problem. These people, because these people believe that because they're really good at solving problems through software, they're experts at everything.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not. And they certainly aren't smarter than you about whether or not you should have a right to choose your own government.
Yeah. And it's
And
the
if they succeed, you will not have that again.
And it's the ultimate irony right now
Yeah.
that you have this coalition because the goals of those folks who think everyone else is, too stupid, the democracy elevates the stupid, are in uh, coordination, in concert with the goals of some of the very people they would think they're the most stupid, folks like on the religious right. Right now, they are on the same team, although the cracks are finally starting to make a difference. But I mean, that's the irony of it all, and
Well,
that's where they
one of
come
the most
together
important
on Trump.
one one of the most important things to understand is that in systems where fascism succeeded, the religious groups were lockstep behind it for the most part.
Oh, yes. They would take a
They,
religious element. They would sort of almost not just, I don't want to say take on the religion, but kind of take it over.
yes, so the resistors to these were exceptions to the religious institutions.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, and this is really starting to show up in a increasing number of religious officials. They're going, you need to hang on here because this is not what, especially Christians, this is not what Jesus taught you.
Right.
This is anathema. This is completely opposite of the way you should be behaving. One last thing I wanted to mention is, um, oh, I forgot that one again. We'll skip it and I'll bring it up another time.
That sounds
But
good.
I
We'll
thought
have,
about something else. But I think it's really easy to identify when you have this definition where fascism is and where it isn't. And let me just tell you, I have a friend. His name's Brian. His mother's from Germany, and she grew up during the Nazi regime, and she survived World War II. And she's telling my friend Brian and all her kids, I've seen this.
Right.
I know what this is. This is happening. And I'm telling you, if you listen to somebody who grew up in it, if you don't listen to them, oh, I know what I was going to say just because of this. So if you're not listening to these people who lived through it, you are divorced from reality.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you don't know what you're talking about. And I want to talk about one last thing and then we'll run. There's a historian out there and he's being cited a lot. And I think he's wrong or he could be wrong. I'm not going to conclude it. He could be right, but I think it's an empirical question. I think there's something to be said. And he's right about the conditions he sets up. He's right about his assumptions. I just think his conclusion is wrong. There is not an example of a fascist leader rising to power and holding it who has then been upended by democratic means.
I was thinking about saying that they don't give up power. The system itself doesn't give up power. It has to be taken.
Well, yes, that's true.
Mhm.
But it's only true in countries where there's not a long democratic tradition before fascism,
Well, like what? I mean, I'm curious. Who are you
like the
thinking of?
Germans. There was no long tradition of democracy in Germany. There was no long tradition of democracy in Portugal. There was no long tradition of democracy in Italy. Italy and Germany didn't exist as nations until the 1800s.
Right, but yeah, which only makes the point. I don't
No, it
understand
doesn't make the point at all.
because they didn't
We
have it, so they had to be violently overthrown. But
right.
what's an example of
What
one that did have the history that didn't? What's any example of a
it
fascist
it
dictatorship that did not have to be violently overthrown?
we're the experiment.
Well, right. Okay, I got you. Yes,
We
we
are
are.
the
Right there
experiment.
with you. Yeah.
We're the only country that has seen a real rise of fascism. But we have institutions which were developed as guardrails. We have
Okay.
a very long tradition of that. And one of the most important traditions of that is business. And this is why the whole thing with Jimmy Kimmel gives me some hope.
Hmm.
Because here's what happened. They threatened to yank ABC's license. What happened? What was the response to that? Millions of people dumped Disney, Hulu, ESPN.
Yep.
They
I'm
lost
one
a
of them.
massive amount of value to the company overnight
Yeah.
when that happened. So people used a democratic process, which is linked to the market system, the capitalist market system we have, and they got a reversal of a fascist policy.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we're out of the woods, but I think that's the difference. If we're able to use democratic policies to overturn this movement toward fascism, we're going to be the exception. And it's just going to be because a set of principles were established in our government, and then we built institutions to try to prevent that rise. And then they did it before fascism. Fascism is a 20th century thing.
Right.
And so if there's any way to, and the thing is, if you read extensively what the founders wrote, when they were talking about why you have to do things a certain way and why you have to have certain institutions or principles in American government, they were thinking about a person exactly like Trump. They were thinking about somebody who was rich, somebody who was self-aggrandizing, somebody who had popular democratic support.
Hmm.
And so if we're going to be able to get out of it, I think his historical example is right, except for maybe, possibly, hopefully, the conditions in America where the founding of our entire system is predicated on how do we stop anti-democratic ideas.
Yeah.
And boy, the worst people, the people worse than the ones saying that Nazis are left wing are the ones who say we don't have a democracy, we have a republic.
I know. I hate that.
Hello,
I hate
republic
that.
is a form of democracy. You want to know how I know that? Go back and read the Greeks who invented it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Go back and read a little book called Democracy in America, for that
Yeah,
matter.
yeah. Well, they're not going to read that book because it was written by a French guy.
All right.
So
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Well,
this thing is what I like about this particular episode is I hope, I hope I'm giving you a set of tools to go out there and go, hey, look at this thing. Is it fascist or not?
mhm.
Hey, look at this government. Is it fascist or not? Hey, is fascism really there? So I hope that, I'm not going to go out there and say, well, this is the blah, blah, blah. I'm just hoping this will help you get that
Mhm. Yeah.
because people need an understanding of what it is and how it works. And if they don't do it, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. You're living it.
It's what I tell people is no, the Republican Party is not like the Nazi Party from 1939 to 1945. Where we are now in this timeline is 1933 Germany.
Right. I was going to say the century is young.
And if we don't fix this, if we don't find a way through democratic institutions, it's going to be bad.
Yep.
It's going to be really bad.
Mhm. Well, on that lovely note, we should
Ooh,
probably wrap up.
yes, we should.
But yeah, and look for this stuff in fiction.
Please,
It's
yes.
there, and anytime you see a depiction of fascism, with the exception to the rule is the book Starship Troopers. If you go to film and you go to most other books, anytime you see a depiction of fascism in fiction, you're probably looking at an anti-fascist work of art. So get out there, pay money for it, and enjoy it.
Yeah, the artists, this is the reason why they went after Jimmy Kimmel first. This is the reason why they go after entertainers, artists, film people, writers, because that's the best antidote to fascism is art. So if you're unhappy, write poetry, make movies, write books,
Yeah. Keep the fire burning.
emphasize to people how important it is. You can't beat the artists because you can kill people, but you can't kill ideas.
Right? It's like the Batman thing. There you go.
All
All right. Well, thanks for
right.
listening, folks. This has been a lot of fun. And we will see you soon with something else fun.
Yes, we will. Keep listening, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Our theme music is by Christopher Piatek.